Welcome back to the HOF YouTube channel. My name is Brian. You may have seen me from one of our onboarding calls or one of our streams. And today I'm going to be giving a comprehensive overview of how to best use the HOF tools to make smarter NFL bets. So I'm going to be sharing my screen from the desktop HOF app, and so you guys can follow along and let me know if you guys have any questions as well in the comments, and we'd be happy to address them. So getting right into it. We're currently on the home tab for NFL up here, and today is Thursday, October 2nd, so we have a Thursday night football game here today, and then if we go to Sunday, we'll see the full slate with the odds as well for these game lines. Starting with the Thursday game, if we press on the research button here, it'll bring up our matchup. So here we have the team rankings for various categories across the board here for both 49ers offense and the Rams defense. If we press the arrow, it will switch sides. So we get both sides of the ball for both teams. And keep in mind that these rankings are constantly updating after the results of each game. So week by week, they will change slightly. So you have always the most up-to-date rankings for both sides. And that is key because this is how a lot of our matchup grades are calculated, which we'll get into later. Moving past that, we have our key players section in here. I would recommend starting with 25-26 at this point in the season so we can see all of those recently used players as well as rookies will be populating in this section here. But we'll definitely touch on players later in the video, so we'll skip over most of this for now. Now, below that, we have the usage share chart. So what this is showing you for whatever time frame you're looking at here, what is the breakdown when it comes to targets and carries for both teams, and then overall on the field, as well as in the red zone if we're trying to target anytime touchdowns, right? And these will change based upon whatever time frame you selected. So L3, this stands for last 3 games, L5, last 5 games, etc. H2H is going to mean head-to-head, so the matchup just between the 49ers and the Rams historically. And then we have our 2 season-long time frames here, current season and the last 2 seasons. So whatever you need, we got it here right for you. Now looking into it, looks like for this current season, when it comes to targets, Christian McCaffrey for the 49ers is actually receiving the majority share here at 30%. And then on the other side, Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams both are dominating the the targets for the LA Rams so far this year. When it comes to carries and red zone, Christian McCaffrey also dominating 76% of those red zone carries, and then Kyren Williams is getting 55%. So these we can look at for anytime touchdowns here later today, but this is definitely a good spot to gain inspiration from and see who's actually getting the ball the most and then work backwards from there. Down here we have the injuries section where we'll list all of the players for both teams who might be questionable or out for each game. If you do see one of the players in here, we can actually click on that player page and then click on this player news button up on the corner here. If we press that, it'll show you what the recent news is for that player. It looks like he's on IR, so not too much recent news, but for example, Christian McCaffrey, we can see if there's any news for him. It doesn't need to just be injuries, but recent gameplay or things along those lines will also be found there. So we got everything you need now all in one spot. Now we can move into how to do some analysis when it comes to each player's stats page. So for example, we can look at Christian McCaffrey, who today has a D matchup grade for rushing yards against the LA Rams. And if we look into this a little bit further here and go into his player page, we'll see that LA is actually 7th when it comes to rushing yards allowed. So 7th out of 32 teams. That means they're in the top 25% when it comes to rushing defenses, particularly against running backs. And then also they're 2nd when it comes to receiving yards against running backs. So a pretty strong LA defense here. This is how those matchup grades are calculated. Any times are also tough for running backs here as well, which if you see here and we kind of change the stat here, we'll see that the matchup grade changes a little bit, also depending on over or under in there. Cool. Now, once we come back here, we can see that this line is actually adjustable. So if you press the plus or minus, we'll get a little bit more of an alternate line, and we'll have the latest odds over on the right side here, where you can see where you're getting the best value for your money. Now, another thing I want to point out here is the recent rushing stat lines. This is pretty common around over all tools on HOF and all sports. This will just be slightly adapted to whatever sport you're looking at, as well as position. So rushing stat lines for running backs, of course, and then receiving stat lines for wide receivers, etc. Now, when it comes to looking at the players who have played against the LA defense, we see that Jonathan Taylor, he easily surpassed the 50-yard rush line that we have set here. Saquon actually didn't, ended at 46, but the two previous ones, Tony Pollard and Nick Chubb, also went for over 50 yards. So kind of looking at this here, Christian McCaffrey also has gone over this line 3 out of the last 4 games. He's averaging 15 rush attempts so far per game this season, and then around 3.4 red zone rush attempts. So he's definitely getting the most carries on the team, as we saw in the usage share, also getting the most targets as well. So he's a very large part of the 49ers defense here today. That kind of makes me like rush plus receiving yards. A lot of people ask me what favorite prop that is I like to bet on. I have a preference for rushing plus receiving, kind of those combo yards for quarterbacks, maybe passing plus rushing. Just in that there's a few different ways you can get to that point. You will have to take a little bit smaller of an alternate line, but still good value, especially if you're building a parlay. So now getting into the filters for the player stats page here, we have Kyren Williams, who is running back 1 for the LA Rams. Looks like his even line for rush yards is around 70 today. And we can take this down to see what a better line might be with a better hit rate for our parlay. Looks like 60 could be good here. And if we press this button up in the corner, filters, and we can see how has Kyren Williams actually performed in home games over the last 2 seasons. He actually has performed a little bit better. His average is higher, his average is actually a little lower, but he's covering the 70-yard line a lot more frequently. And then we can throw on certain filters like opponent rushing defense and then take it down that way. Actually, it's surprising that at home against bottom 50%, he has a lower hit rate than against better rushing defenses. There are a lot of cool filters in here to check out. Matchup grade is what we had talked about earlier, calculated based upon the opponent's defensive rankings in that category. But what I want to show y'all here is filtering out a certain player. So if we go to the roster page and then we see who's injured for the Rams today, it looks like Higbee is questionable. We can press this button here and filter out that player on our results. So if we come back, now we'll see that in games without Tyler Higbee, Williams actually is averaging a higher number. So potentially like less weapons for Matthew Stafford to work with. They end up handing Kyren Williams the ball a little bit more. And we can see that in here, Higbee has been filtered out. So if we take it off, we'll see that he actually didn't cover this line in 2 games last year. And then if we filter without him, then those games have disappeared. So he actually does better without Tyler Higbee in the lineup, and then particularly at home as well. But a lot of cool filters in here for you guys to check out on your own time. I won't get too deep into it, but you can get extremely granular when it comes to looking at filters that way. Similarly, we can look at the team stats pages here, and we have all of these team props available as well, some with odds, some without, but all of them are useful in kind of understanding how the flow of this game might play out. Game script is a common term that's being used now, but kind of understanding who has advantage in certain areas, as well as betting on your things such as spread and money lines, team total points, etc. So total points is a common one as well. We can see what a good line might be for that, and then take something generous here for us. Now we could have the same filters in here and say, how does the Rams perform total points wise at home? And actually, they've only covered 41.5 2 out of 5 times in the last 10 games at home. Moving into the second way to analyze plays and find good value with HOF is the leaderboards tab. So clicking on the leaders tab here, you can look at the current season time frame, and the default is going to be quarterbacks. We're looking at pass yards for quarterbacks, and this tells you how often this season has a quarterback hit 200 pass yards. Looks like Brock Purdy has covered this in 2 out of 2 games. Mac Jones, so both on San Francisco here today. Daniel Jones has covered this, and then we'll get the lines too, as well as matchup grades, which we discussed earlier. We have the same things for running backs as well. All of the same props that we saw earlier, same thing for wide receivers. So this is a good way to target if you want to say who scored the most anytime touchdowns so far this year and who's getting to their line consistently. Amon-Ra, St. Brown is one example. He scored 3 out of 4 games so far this season, and he's at plus 110 with a C+ matchup grade. And we can go kind of down the line here and see who's scoring the most, who is getting to their line consistently for whatever prop you're looking at. But this is a great place to gain inspiration from, and then you can go from here into looking further into a specific player, doing our analysis through filters that we had mentioned earlier, and going from there. But kind of the underrated aspect of this leaderboards tab is the teams part. So if we go to teams and then either offensive or defense, we can actually look directly and see for the current season which teams are allowing the most passing yards or rushing yards or touchdowns, whatever stat you want to target. We have the Bengals is the 3rd worst pass defense in the league so far this year. I would target the opposing team, the Detroit Lions here. And so if we go to the Detroit Lions versus Bengals page, we can see that Jared Goff, of course, has an A+ matchup or an A matchup for pass yards. And at a line of 200, he's actually covered this in 9 out of the last 10 games. The last one coming against Cleveland, who has a strong defense. But I would probably take this over, add it to the bet slip by pressing our odds button here. And we can see it populate on this side. But that's one way to kind of use the leaderboards tab and use certain stats you want to see, targeting these bad defenses, which I think is a pretty good strategy. We'll be able to see rushing yards as well, and then kind of work backwards and say, all right, who's the running back for the Washington Commanders here against the Bears? It would be Krosky Merritt, I believe. And so kind of going to that player stats page, working backwards and seeing, taking the over on that side of things. Similarly, for the offensive side, we can just see who's consistently putting up the most points, or the most game lines actually would have the most points or the most team points, who's tending to go over certain lines more than others, informing your decisions from that way. So very powerful tool, leaderboards is. I use it every single day, helps me a lot, but I would definitely suggest checking those tools out. So the last tool I want to point out on HOF here is the Trends tab. So Trends is going to identify certain picks that might be undervalued by the odds that are given. So for example, we can see that the edge box here for Mac Jones is 78%. What this means is, looking at the time frame we're on right now, which is the current season, he has 100% hit rate for throwing over 270 pass yards, and they're given at odds of plus 359. So if we take the implied probability from plus 359, which is just a mathematical formula that you can search up on the internet, but if we can imagine a plus 100 is about 50% implied probability, plus 359 is roughly 22% implied probability, and we take the actual hit rate, which is 100%, minus the or subtract the implied probability, which was 22%, we get that 78% edge here. Now, this is not saying that these picks are most likely to hit. It's just saying you're probably getting more bang for your buck using these props here. So In general, the higher the edge, the more undervalued the pick may be that day. And similarly to other pages, we can use filters here to find exactly what we're looking for. So if I want to see things like a 70% or higher hit rate, as well as a B or better matchup grade, I can go ahead and do that. And then look at the last 2 years, for example, and see these props in here that you might not find on your own. It will be some unders in there, as well as, you know, more underrated props that are kind of not the most commonly bet, but definitely a great place to gain inspiration from. I would say this is not an end-all be-all. After you see a prop that you like, definitely go into that player stats page and do the same analysis that we had gone over earlier. So looking at certain filters, certain criteria that we like here, home games, and you know, certain rankings as well. And then also being wary of recent passing stat lines versus the same defense. So actually looks like through 4 games this year, only one quarterback has thrown an interception against Dallas defense. So like to see that, and this could be an undervalued prop here today. Now, one more filter on this page is going to be the certain stat type. So if we go to stat type and then go down to the bottom here, we'll see that there's kind of a lot of these also like under the radar props that, you know, might not be as popular or straightforward as some think, but a lot of these defensive props and kicking props particularly have a lot of value on them, which can be taken advantage of if, you know, evaluated correctly. So things like sacks, things like kicking points, things like, you know, a tackle assists, and things, defensive props like that. They're all going to be pulled up here, and as there's more odds for more different lines, this whole section will populate as well. So definitely a great place to, you know, see what might be undervalued and add some plus money to your parlay from here. But say we like looking at this and we like the Panero kicking points, for example, we can press the odds button, add it to our parlay on the right side here, and then continue on. Now moving on to our parlay optimizer, which you can add picks to at any point during your research process simply by pressing the odds button that you see. We can see that we have 4 picks in here from 3 different games. So we have a same game parlay plus with the same game parlay of Detroit versus Cincinnati. And if we scroll down a little bit, we see all the picks from each specific game. Looking at this same game parlay here, we have 2 picks from the Lions. So we can actually go into game logs down here and see when have the first leg hit, which is Goff, and then the second leg hit, which is Jahmyr Gibbs anytime touchdown. Have they actually hit together, and how often does that happen? We can look at a longer time frame as well and see if, you know, sometimes one will hit and the other does not hit, even though they both have solid individual hit rates. So definitely make sure you're checking here in the game logs as well as correlation to see how those legs might be related, because you'd be surprised at some things that don't actually hit together all that often. But you can do this for all same game parlays as well as same game parlay pluses. And what I want to call out here is one, there you can use the same filters that you saw on all the other pages, and then 2, in-app parlay odds, obviously across both desktop and the mobile app. We'll be able to see what the sportsbook odds are for the certain picks that we have in our bet slip here, and then if we like them, and then if they're all offered across other sportsbooks as well, we can see what odds are where you're getting the best odds from which sportsbook. Now, if you press on the open with button, just the logo, it'll pull up all your picks in the bet slip, same ones that we have, as well as we can see that those live parlay odds are in there. So you're all ready to go. Really useful for the mobile app. You can just send it directly to your sportsbook and lock it in once you're ready to, once you've done all your research and you're ready to go. Thanks to everybody who tuned in to this tutorial overview of how to best use the HOF app to make smarter NFL bets start hitting more parlays and stop losing by one leg using our parlay optimizer, as well as just make the overall process more efficient, save you some more time, and allow you to fire off some more bets. So if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave us a like or a comment. And if you want to see tutorials for other sports, we have on HOF, MLB, NBA, college football, soccer, NHL. We have it all. Just let us know what you want to see next, and we'll get to it. So thanks again to everybody who tuned in, and see you guys next time. Peace.